I'm curious about what you see as sort of the white space out there in Silicon Valley and really the world when it comes to these AI bets. What are you thinking about?
Tim, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, white space is harder and harder to find, given, I think, since 2022, we've been operating in a fairly noisy market, many consensus bets years over year. So what we're thinking about is what stories do founders come with that we actually believe are non-consensus, that are not obvious, that we walk away thinking, maybe that's not right. But then after thinking about it, getting to know the founder more, we recognize that there are a series of things that could be proven to be true that would change the world and make that company, in fact, a market leader.
So much of the oxygen, at least in what we talk about in the massive valuations for two big firms, OpenAI and Anthropic, of course, it's sucked up by that. And yet yesterday, our Bloomberg News team, it was Wednesday night, had this just incredible scoop about Anthropic possibly making a $6 billion acquisition. And it was funny because I think a lot of people who are outside the industry don't even necessarily know what Descartes AI does. But it was a good example of sort of, the massive market, even at a level with a company that is worth like $1 trillion in the private market right now. I'm curious what you see as the opportunities that are out there. Like what exists in terms of tech, in your view, that 5-10 years will become the next OpenAI or Anthropic?
Yeah, of course. There's a massive opportunity in the future of work. We're just getting started there. How do we think about, to date, we've been thinking a lot about chatbots. How do we think about AI actually doing jobs themselves and having humans there, laborers, workers, to say, yes, that's right, no, that's incorrect. This is the very beginning of that. Robotics has both consumer and business applications, and business is wonderfully fragmented. There's a ton of white space there. And then infrastructure. When you think about what agents are going to need to be productive across applications, that infrastructure is just starting to be built out.
I'm curious from your view, are we having the right conversation when we talk about this idea of a zero-sum game when it comes to productivity? Like, some people will become more productive, others will be completely replaced. From your perch as a venture capitalist who looks into this, is that the right conversation to be having?
We believe it's not a zero-sum game. As intelligence proliferates through these applications, it's just the nature of our labor is going to change. There are going to be many more jobs. They're just going to be different. They're going to be higher leverage. Frankly, they're going to be more engaging. And so we're excited about the future where AI is taking away the more mundane jobs humans are doing today and sort of levels us all up.
So you're not concerned about like a wipeout of white-collar jobs that Dario Amodei of Anthropic has talked about in the past?
There's certainly going to be, I would say, a shift in jobs. There are going to be a movement from the more mundane to the less mundane, the more engaged. And I think that's what Dario's talking about. We're going to have to reskill. We're going to have to think about the implications for a large number of workers. But again, there are going to be additional jobs too. And the big question is, how do we navigate the transition?
Okay, I've got a bunch of questions about the fundraising process and also about your partners at the firm. I want to start with fundraising. You're launching with $100 million. How difficult was it to raise that, or how easy was it to raise that? I know it's never easy to raise money, but I think it seems like a lot of people want to invest in early stage companies out in Silicon Valley right now.
We raised that capital across just 2 months. So
easy.
It was fairly straightforward, yes.
What's the future capital raise schedule looking like?
Well, we think the market's barbelled. You see companies coming out and raising hundreds of millions, billions to start. You also have companies that are raising just a few million to start. And we have a strategy that allows us to invest in both. And so we will, on the more frontier side, we will continuously raise, doing SPVs and co-invest with our LPs. And then we have an open fund too at the early stage that allows us to invest in founders just getting started that are arguably more capital efficient.
Where are you looking right now geographically?
Predominantly Silicon Valley, New York, Toronto, Paris, London, Tel Aviv are all very interesting hotspots for AI.
Is there no question that San Francisco is the leader right now?
There's no question.
What about versus China and the tech that we see coming out of China?
Yeah, it's arguably why we continue to see such massive raises, so much capital come into the ecosystem. There are many geopolitical questions and issues, I think, that we're grappling with and trying to understand, and everyone wants to win. And so I think we have to be very mindful about enabling researchers from all over the world to come to the United States, to push the frontier, to keep the United States at the bleeding edge is a top priority.
Shaun, you're launching this with a couple other huge names, ex-Google DeepMind researcher Oriol Vinyals, Yann LeCun, AI pioneer. People know Yann's work in the space. What do they bring to the table when thinking about where to invest?
Yeah, at the early stage, number one is community and access. Who do we know? Who can we interact with at day zero that's just starting to formulate an idea? And Yann and Oriol are embedded in the ecosystem. Yann, of course, executive chairman at Advanced Machine Intelligence, professor at NYU. Oriol just co-founded Discovery Loop. And former co-lead of Gemini. So they're wonderfully connected. Dario, you brought up at Anthropic, spent time at DeepMind. The Perplexity team came out of NYU. And so you're looking for wonderfully connected investors, partners, and Yann and Oriol are just that.